We're live. Happy Friday. Welcome to RE Journals Breaking Through the Disruption webinar series. Got a great group on data centers today. Going to get through a few housekeeping items first. First of all, it's COVID. Do you know what day it is? It's Friday today. But we got to thank Connexus Energy, SIOR, Washington County, and Anoka County. I've been saying this a lot, so for those of you that are logged in and seen a lot of these CE things, it's a thank you to these sponsors. We could not do this without you. We had to pivot from live events to webinars. It's been great for us. It's been great for you. It does cost money, and the sponsors help us offset that. This is us, RE Journals. In case you didn't know, we're part of a bigger group. It's not just Minnesota Real Estate Journal anymore. We are Illinois Real Estate Journal, Red News in Texas, Midwest Real Estate News, Chicago Industrial Properties, 6 total publications in 17 states, working on 104 live events this year. This is a continuing ed video, or I'm sorry, webinar. So I got to read this and you got to follow along if you want to get the credit. So this webinar has been approved by the Minnesota Commissioner of Commerce for 1 hour of real estate continuing education. And this first bullet point's the most important thing. How do we track attendance? So instead of coming into a building and signing in and signing out, we track you when you sign into the software, when you click on your unique link. If you use somebody else's link, you for sure have to go into the chat room right now, enter your name and license number, because we don't have that if you did that. But it's also good just to go in there and put your name, just to double check belt and suspenders, so that when Katie goes through and does this, she sees that you logged in right on time. I will ask 2 questions throughout at random times. You have to go into that chat room and answer those questions in order to get CE credit. So you have to log in, you have to log out, you have to answer 2 questions. Do those 4 things and you'll get your 1 hour CE credit. Okay, if you're having connection issues, you're watching this online on your computer, on your phone, on your tablet, there's a button at the top that says reconnect. I'm looking at our server, says 5 bars of connection out of 5. So we're in good shape. If there's an issue, it's you and it's not me. Hit that button, it fixes just about everything. So if you see Chris saying glitch, that may be actually him, but it might be on your end too. So push that reset button, that'll fix 99% of the problems. If that doesn't work, use Google Chrome on a PC. You can go on your phone. If you're on an iPhone, use Safari. If you're on an Android phone, use Google Chrome. If you do all those things, one of them is going to connect well for you. So the chat room, we already talked about that a little bit, but that's where you're going to answer your CE questions. It's also a good place to network with other people. I see people are putting in their name in here. You can say hi to each other. That's okay. This is also where you will ask questions of our panelists. When you ask a question, I'm going to flag it with a red Q, and then we'll have these panelists get to it as soon as we can. We are recording this. I get this question all the time. Are you recording? Yes, the answer is yes. We recorded all of our webinars from COVID on to today. So there's 46 of them on our website right now. We also have a YouTube channel. You can get there either way, through our website or our YouTube channel. If you do go to the YouTube channel, make sure to follow us, because I bet my kids I'd get to 500, and I think I'm at like 126 right now. So I appreciate 350 more follows. Okay, today, COVID-19 and the effect on data centers. I've been waiting to do this event. I know these people have been waiting to do this event since April, so I'm really glad we got this one off the ground, and we're going to get started. I'm going to play a little Hollywood Squares, have people introduce themselves. And on my screen, I'm going to go clockwise. Not sure it's that way on your screen, but Jaquel, can you introduce yourself first? And then what I want to hear is what your name, what you do, what your firm is, company is, and then what you're doing. It's like week 9 or 10 of COVID. I can't even count anymore. What are you doing? Are you working from home? What kind of projects are you working on? What's going on in your world?
Hi, good morning. Yes, thanks, Todd. I am Jaquel Hyder, Anoka County Economic Development. So my job is to work with all of our regional partners to help promote the region for development, to help businesses expand, attract new companies. And then I also work on a lot of unique partnerships, which you'll hear about today, specifically with data centers. And that's called the Minnesota Tech Corridor. I am working from home. If you can't tell, this is my lovely backdrop. I think it's well over week 9 now. Many of us, we're in Minnesota. So we've been home since March, I think 16th. Occasional, maybe in-person meetings when I absolutely have to, but it's working well, and I think all of us are getting through this together. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to Bruce Saylor, and I'm going to count how many weeks it's been, because I think I lost track. You're right. While you're talking, Bruce, I'm going to get us a count.
All right, will do. Hi, I'm Bruce Saylor with Connexus Energy. We're the electric utility that serves much of the North Metro area of Minneapolis-St. Paul, and I'm the principal for community and economic development. And basically been working from home for at least 3 months now, and will probably be working off and on at home for the rest of the summer. So I try to go in on the weekends just to see what's on my desk and stuff, but life is good.
So do you wake up in the morning like I do and you have to check what day it is because you're not quite sure? Could be
Absolutely.
Saturday.
I
I'm
know.
hoping it's Saturday.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
I counted we're in week 14, so I clearly have lost track. Okay, Dan Peterson, it's to you.
Hey, good morning, Todd, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm a vice president at CBRE, and I'm a broker that works with a focus in data centers. I would say that there's somewhat of a normalcy to what I'm doing. It's Friday in summer in Minnesota, so I'm at the lake cabin at Lake Margaret on the Gold Chain, working remotely here and everywhere else, certainly the last 3 months, but kind of a bit of a lifestyle adjustment, having a few more family members in tow. So, but happy to be here, and thanks for having us.
Do you have kids that are school age then?
Yes, I do.
So
Yeah.
did you have to homeschool, or did you have somebody help you with that?
Well, they're supposedly a little bit able to work on their own. I've actually got one in college where she's off doing her thing, but the one that is in school here figured out how to do the distance learning and compacted into about 2 hours a day. So it's
Nice.
like not summer break for 4 months now.
Cool. All right, Chris Ng, what are you up to? Tell us about yourself and what you're up to.
All right. Good morning, Todd, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning, and it's a pleasure to be a part of the panelist this morning. I'm also working remotely, like my other panel colleagues here. And lately, honestly, it's been dealing with a lot of small businesses that are really struggling through these difficult times, helping them with financing, helping them navigate the SBA programs, just helping them in the reopening process. And we're finding out that a lot of them are still struggling, even though they are reopening. It's really expensive to reopen. And we're just helping them as much as we can get through this process. And it's been very, very difficult. So looking forward to the continued recovery process here, continuing to work with the small businesses. And honestly, I'm looking forward at doing some more marketing and promotion, and specifically talking about the Minnesota Technology Corridor and the future. It's a nice, refreshing look forward instead of just dealing with emergency rescue.
Yeah, it's great that you're available to help people reopening. I mean, we hear that all the time now. It's everybody's swamped trying to figure this out. Architects are crazy busy. Who would have thought architects would be busy during a pandemic? But they're probably the busiest people right now. So, well, let's dig into data centers then. Dan, I'm going to start with you. So just give us an overview and what is your sense of the data market right now? Yeah, during and then maybe a little bit post-pandemic. And then turn your microphone on and we'll get a better response.
There we go.
There you go.
Well, I'm happy to say that in the midst of all this uncertainty, there's continued demand for data centers. If you take cloud use as an example, first quarter revenue growth from the major providers are all up double digits year over year. So that's Amazon, Microsoft, Google. 33, 27, 52% up over the year is what they're marking. And some of you may have seen where Microsoft Teams usage actually shot up 700%. That was actually in March in Italy. But things like Zoom was up 400% from a year ago. So you see that kind of increase in cloud use, and enterprise demand from cloud services are expected to accelerate. And as well, going forward, hyperscalers they're going to continue to invest in capacity development longer term to meet that demand. So we're seeing the business continue cautiously, but it is growing and moving forward. I think the pandemic has kind of triggered a rethinking or a reminder that what critical infrastructure really is and what that means. I mean, the internet's importance is ubiquitous, and data centers already supported services and applications in many parts of our daily life, both personal and education, especially now, and business, of course. But with the increase of data associated with what's coming from edge development, along with the increased demand for virtual services through what's been happening because of the pandemic, data center demand's expected to continue to grow. And that's in all locations, whether it's rural, suburban, urban, and what's kind of being defined now as the edge. So it's an interesting time. Certainly, a lot of the aspects that affect all of us from a business sense or from just a personal safety sense and just how society is working affect the data center world. But we're chugging along, that's for sure.
Fantastic. Sorry, there's a lot to do in the background today. This is good. This is a great event. I'm excited. So we're going to talk about the tech corridor quite a bit. So assume I'm a novice and I have no idea what you're talking about. Bruce, if you could dive in, tell us a little bit about the tech corridor, and then how does this partnership benefit all of our data centers?
Sure. Maybe I'll just start kind of with the concept. And really, it started many years ago when we were getting RFIs, requests for information for high-tech companies, including data centers, looking for areas in our service territory that had a high energy capacity, a lot of bandwidth, a lot of land available, flat land basically. And what we found is that we did a sweet spot analysis of our service territory, and we found a unique area on our northeast side of our service territory that had all of the above. Great energy capacity, a lot of land available, it's flat, access to the freeway, and probably most importantly right now is the bandwidth, really that high bandwidth. So we decided instead of waiting for the phone to ring for us to pick up to respond to a request is why don't we proactively go out and promote this area. So we reached out to Anoka County at Jekyll and Washington County with Chris Singh, talked about the idea. We thought it was a great idea that, let's continue pursuing this concept and moving it forward. So the partnership really started with, the three of us. We got all 5 cities on board with us, behind us and with us, part of the team, all of the fiber companies in the area. So we think it's a great partnership moving forward. And part of that is we could talk about what the technology corridor is, but we went ahead and created just a short video on really what the tech corridor is and kind of explains a little bit more. If we want to go ahead and show that now.
Sure do. You all are going to challenge me today. This is the second time I've done a screen share. So your first CE question, if you're on for CE right now, quit multitasking. You're not supposed to be doing that. Go into the chat room and here's your question. Can you hear the audio on this video? So if you can hear it, type in yes. If you can't, type in no. I'm going to be watching closely, but I think this is going to work out just fine. So hold tight. Here we come. And there we go. Well, that was interesting. I saw the chat room. Everybody said yes at first, and then it went dark. I'm going to have to investigate what happened there. But thank you for still being on. I see everybody's still here. But that was a great video. So, Jaquel, do you want to kind of follow up with maybe what we missed if we couldn't hear you sound and what else is going on?
Yes, good morning again. So the video did have just kind of background music. There was no explanation. I think you kind of got the gist of it from the words on the screen. But following up on Bruce's perspective on how we got here, I'm going to share my screen with everyone as well here quickly. Let's see. Hold on just 1 second with me. Maybe not. All right. So everyone's able to see this. You know, Bruce kind of touched on the background of how we got here to give you a visual of exactly where, you know, if you're from this region, you know where Anoka and Washington County are. If you're not, and you're from outside the region, again, northeast corner of the city's metro, Anoka and Washington County come together in a unique spot right along the 35 corridor, which obviously stretches across north-south in our nation. Big hub for transportation, but obviously with that infrastructure comes this sweet spot of resources that kind of Bruce touched on, you know, the fiber. A lot of times you run along the right of way of transportation corridors. A lot of the other resources that follow with that. So it's important to have both of us at the table because we, again, have 2 different jurisdictional regulations. We have 5 cities also that are amongst this corridor, Lino Lake, Centerville, Hugo, Forest Lake, and Columbus. They are another stakeholder because obviously they have that local control and approval process. And then the landowners and the real estate brokers, they all came to the table along with the fiber providers, obviously the power provider. You know, Conexus Energy has the main power source in this area, but Xcel Energy also has a little bit of service territory. So they too have been at the table. So that collaboration in order to get this partnership going was key. And then we also had a few other kind of consultant-like partners, you know, Parallel Technologies, Zayo as well kind of provided some inside perspective to what goes into the process approvals for data centers. So we can do all the work ahead of time in getting ready for that project, learn from past experiences from RFIs that have come out and, you know, project approvals and say, what can we do now until that phone call is getting serious again to make sure we are ready for those data center projects, to make it easy on the partners that are trying to get a data center project off the ground. There's so many complexities, obviously, that are above and beyond just a normal business development. So that's why these partnerships were key. And with that, we'll talk about this later on a little bit more, but it comes, you know, with a total opportunity to fast track those approval processes, to remove those barriers, to have those conversations early on. And it also allows us opportunity to do a lot of research and provide a lot more information on properties that are available that maybe isn't typically done during that first stage of due diligence. That way we can jumpstart to that second conversation right away. So again, it helps the end users and the consultants that are at the table, you know, get further in that process, remove some of those question marks that maybe are still left on the RFI and some of that risk by working with these partners. So again, it's predictable. It creates opportunities for us to start the conversation earlier. And for all of us, it creates an opportunity for Anoka County and Washington County and Conexus Energy to be more proactive in getting these projects done versus, again, like Bruce said, waiting for the phone call to ring. So I'll turn it over to Chris to see if he'd like to add anything else from there.
Thanks, Jaquel. Yeah, one of the things that's been really impressive to me is the partnerships, and Jaquel and Bruce both touched on it. Usually what you would see with a group like this is that we would be competitors, right? We'd be trying to get that next customer. But it's really unusual for 2 counties and 5 cities and 2 electric companies and 6 fiber providers and, you know, commercial realtors to be working together to promote an area like this. And so that's what makes this collaborative effort with the Minnesota Technology Corridor unique. If you need dual electric to serve a data center site, we've got that. We can provide that right now. If you need dual fiber providers to serve a data center site, we've got that connection in that organization where you've got the same folks sitting around the same table talking about how do we work together to promote this area and make sure that if a data center is looking for those types of opportunities, we can provide it immediately. And it's been just amazing to be part of this partnership. And I'm very proud of the partnership that we've created here, including Dan Peterson, and I'm going to turn it over to Dan to talk about how, for example, the city of Forest Lake is working with him and the partnership to promote the Minnesota Technology Corridor.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what everyone's saying here is really important to emphasize. Having the fast track to keep a conversation live on a site selection discussion is always, I think, a great component of respecting everyone's time and investment. And that's really what we try to do in a lot of these national projects, where we're trying to stay on the list, so to speak, for site selection and checking boxes and showing where there are positive attributes for a specific site that we want to continue to highlight, and knowing that there's a local collection of municipalities and utility providers and other partners, other stakeholders that have done that legwork to really help expedite any vetting on the part of the actual end user. Forest Lake's a great example. We have a 123-acre shovel-ready greenfield site owned by the city, but everything that Chris was hitting on, the fiber, the dual utility provider options, all of that exists in a site like this, and we've been happy to see some traction come from a national audience looking at that, and an otherwise unfocused area of technology development like a tier 1 data center market. These collaborations are essential to getting that national attention to come and take a look at these sites. So I'm very proud and pleased to be a part of that partnership when it comes to the Forest Lake site.
Do we want to turn the screen share off? We good with that?
Yep, I'll turn it off here briefly.
There we go. Well, I did it for you. Sorry. Hope we're good. So the next question we've got here is, and this is kind of for Dan. Again, has there been a big effect on the co-location market, and what are service providers saying? Microphone. Gotta get your microphone.
I'm going to get the hang of that by the end of this puppy.
I still do it, and it's been 46 webinars. You're fine.
Aside from user error here, it's business as usual. Of course, minus touring and staffing and other issues that everyone's experiencing with the human interaction and social distancing at the facilities themselves. Demand has remained constant, and there's been an uptick of smaller deals at interconnected data centers. At least we saw that in the early days of the pandemic, which were helping with capacity for work from home needs for these companies. The data center REITs and those service providers, CoreSite, CyrusOne, Equinix, Digital Realty, some of the others, they've far outperformed the other REITs in the other asset classes. We're up over 10% as of late May, and the momentum continues. This is the best sector in real estate right now. And really, it's just a matter of who the investor is, who the user is, and who the operator is that may be benefiting, and depending on what market you're in. The pricing for co-location continues to be competitive nationally, but especially in places like Northern Virginia and the Bay Area. Pre-leasing last quarter for Northern Virginia alone was 46 megawatts, which is not a giant number for them, but a big number for us when you consider, our entire inventory that we track here at CBRE from a third-party co-location standpoint is about 50 megawatts for Minneapolis. That's equal to about the amount that we hear right now just looking from 3 or 4 hyperscalers in Toronto. So again, nationally, globally, the market is very robust. Here in Minneapolis, we're still about 30% vacancy, which is about where we've been. Minimal absorption last quarter. It puts us in that lower area of the secondary data center markets, lower side of it, but I think we're trending in the right way, and there's a number of RFPs in the market. There's, in talking to service providers, I think they're optimistic. Some are moving closer to a new location, some are are putting investment into upgrading facilities, building out some more raised floor in a shell, talking one other provider. So again, as much as business as usual can be said in this time, I would say the data center segment is really there.
Excellent. Chris Ing, I'm going to go over to you. We haven't heard much from you, so it's your turn to talk a lot. Hey, how does the Minnesota Tech Corridor help fast track data center projects? How can it be to our advantage as users, builders, developers?
That's a great question, Todd. Thanks for asking. So one of the things that we've been doing is, as part of this Minnesota Technology Corridor, is educating the cities and the planning commissions and the councils, the decision makers. What is a data center? How does it fit with what you have for your zoning in your certain areas? And, you know, just getting the information out there right now in advance so that when a company comes forward with an inquiry or we get an RFI, we can respond really quickly. Because we don't have to educate the council or the planning commission or anybody, the neighbors, on what a data center looks like, what it does, and then also just by, I mentioned earlier, the collaboration of the partnership. If we know that a data center, for example, is going to want dual service for electric or fiber, we've got those partnerships in place, and it's kind of unusual, as I mentioned, to be able to check that competition at the door and just work together to get stuff done. And we've been very fortunate to have the 5 cities and the 2 counties and the utility providers come to the table and say, yep, we want to promote this area because we realize that if something good happens here, it's good for all of us, and that there might be additional spin-offs that we can utilize to our advantage to try to promote the additional growth in the corridor. So I think just having the ability to have that, you know, Forest Lakes example, again, the city-owned land that is now going through a rezoning process, and having the council and the EDA and the city planning commission all on board saying, yep, this is exactly what we're looking for this area. And I shouldn't, you know, necessarily say that it's only limited to data centers. We're also interested in technology type companies that are heavy users of data. And Bruce alluded to this earlier, and Jaquel as well. In this corridor, we have a significant broadband capability that is underutilized because of just the pure density in the area. It's a lot of undeveloped land, and with major fiber running from Duluth to the Twin Cities right up the freeway. And so just having that available and knowing what that is and working with our partners again is something that we're pretty proud of. And I think we can make that easy for you so that if you do contact us, you know, with one phone call to Bruce, for example, or to Jaquel or myself, we can put you in touch with 5 cities and 2 counties and a whole bunch of sites within those 2 counties to make it move quickly. And granted, maybe not all of those sites or cities is going to work for your client. But we want to move quickly and make it easy for you to you know, once you make that decision that this is the area that you want to look in, we can help you find a site really fast and not delay it, because we know that speed to market is really important. And so with that, I'm going to pause.
I'm going to support you, Chris, in here because I live right on the edge of that tech corridor, and I have amazing internet connectivity. So if anybody watching online right now, go do speed test. I do mine at whatever it is, speedtest.net. Tell me what you have, because I've got a 5 millisecond ping and a full gig of download. It breaks the dial how much capacity I have for the internet. My whole family could be streaming movies on all of their devices and it wouldn't lag at all in my house. So it is a pretty cool area, and it's impressive that the infrastructure that's up here. So I'm going to go over to Bruce, I believe, and you know, talk about speed to market in the tech corridor.
Well, just what we've, you know, learned, and Dan's really the expert on that, is, you know, time is money for a lot of these businesses, and they really can't spend a year or 2 years going through approval processes to see if they can actually start building a project. So speed to market is really money to a lot of these. That's part of it. It's doing a lot of the homework. I think, like everybody's talked about, meeting with the EDAs, the cities, the counties, getting them on board. What is a data center? What isn't a data center? And just kind of doing some preliminary steps before they, you know, really start pulling the trigger and put a shovel in the ground.
Excellent. I'm trying to get your website up in my background, so bear with me, please, if you can. Jaquel, do you have anything else to add in?
Yeah, I would go back to that partnership piece. So that partnership piece is speed to market in itself, right? Those contacts that we have at the table. Dan has been, again, a great partner in this in terms of educating what the end users need. And so that way we're prepared. For example, we can look at a site, we already know where the issues that might arise, if there are any. For instance, we know, sometimes if there's a small little area of wetland or there's any easements on the site, sometimes those things come up a year or 2 years later into the project due diligence. That's coming up at the start. So we can either find another way to assemble land, and we already know who the landowners are. We already know how we can assemble lands. We've had that conversation with our cities about even ways we can restructure the development of future roads. So there's so many opportunities when you have all the partners in place like that. And another really unique example, just how we can fast track and how these partnerships work. We've had meetings with all the fiber providers, again, that are competing a lot of times in this area, and they were talking about opportunities for joint trench opportunities, looking at their service territory that they're usually extremely protective of for the benefit of development in this region, because they realize if they're all much closer to a site, chances are if it's a large enough project, they're going to need business from both of those providers. They're going to need that service. And so these partnerships, again, they're not waiting months or years later for some of these kinks to be worked out. We've already either talked about them, found solutions to them, or have these if and when solutions for a project. So it'll just depend on what comes to the table, the size of a project, when we might need to find these different solutions for either restructuring roadways or fiber extensions, but we've got that ready. So between, the relationship with the owners and the land representatives, the cities, the, utility partners, the counties, we, make it a lot easier. And for our benefit in this region, I think that will only help the companies thrive long-term as well.
Excellent. I noticed Reed Christensen and James Montez have some pretty good connections too. Willing to bet they're in the office. Or they have Midco like I do, and they're out in the boonies. Hey, all right. So how is all of this affecting enterprise IT and the job of IT leaders? Dan, can you take that?
I sure can. Like many of us, the IT leaders we talk to have kind of gone through what we bucket as kind of 3 phases in this whole thing. First, it was crisis management, and then stabilizing operations, and then now planning for a new reality, and that includes reducing costs. There's likely to be cuts in enterprise IT budgets, but this will need to be reconciled with what is a ramp up in remote working and other factors related to that in the infrastructure going forward. 451 actually did a recent survey, and came back with about 27% of all businesses were expecting to have long-lasting remote work policies in place. So, rebudgeting these existing data center projects, reprioritizing initiatives, and adjusting to potential longer-term economic effects of the business are all realities that they're dealing with in this process. From a kind of mechanic standpoint that they're dealing with, and I think, again, it hits on why this partnership that we're talking about with the technology corridor and having those factors and those dots lined up and those ducks in a row. Because there's budget constraints I discussed, but supply chain delays and overall length of data center development procurement cycle takes a while. So the impact that we're going to see is not really going to be apparent until later this year or maybe next year, because we've kind of gone through this last 3-4 months where we went through that paralysis, then back to analysis, and then hopefully plans and strategies to move forward. But we're going to have to see how that plays out, just because of the typical development cycle that needs to occur regardless of any type of black or gray swans. I mean, the takeaway really is what that means is any push to the cloud or a co-location project or an upgrade or a new build for an on-prem or any kind of enterprise project is just going to take a little bit longer. Sometimes it's a staffing hire for design team to architect. Other times it's what I said before, a delay in supply chain. So the last thing we're going to want to have happen is any kind of delay from outside forces once a decision is ready to be made. That's what we're trying to do, is empower that decision making as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So more to factor for these leaders, more to consider, but there's resources for them to help kind of get that advice or get those perspectives outside of the organization to kind of move it forward.
I have to point out to everybody that we just made a networking connection online in the chat room between Samba Tech and this group. That's pretty cool. We've been kind of, as a company, are people actually going to interact and network with each other virtually? So it's time number one. I'm going to count it as a total victory. Let's talk tech talent. So I would think San Francisco's tech talent, Austin's got tech talent. We have an office in Texas, so I think Dallas is saying that they have tech talent, but Minnesota is not a void, right, Jaquel? There's talent here, and you all can work together and help people find the talent and resources they need.
Absolutely. And looking at the chat box here, I'm trying to see, what some of the end users who you might be working with, but many of you probably know a little bit about what our regional talent looks like in MSP. But just some quick facts for you to understand the real benefits we have here with our talent. I mean, we have over 136,000 people across the Twin Cities metro that are in a talent sector. So a lot of times people think of tech talent, they think of Google and they think of San Francisco Bay Area and the people with the trendy clothes. That's not always what tech talent is. A lot of them are within our Fortune 500 companies, right? They're working in computer services or IT services within those companies themselves. So we've got a lot of that talent here for one. Secondly, we have a lot of that talent living in our counties, right? So between Anoka and Washington County, we know we have 200,000 people combined that are leaving the counties every day for work in those tech jobs. Not all of them are in tech, obviously. But again, we have that already here. And we also know we've seen migration come from Chicago and Fargo and Sioux Falls and Des Moines. Those have been kind of our highest other cities. We've seen migration into the Twin Cities. So that's talent, regional opportunities that we can leverage with any of the end users that are talking to us about this region. When I am going to either build a new facility or relocate, what's going on? How do I know we're going to fill those positions? They're looking for the top talent. A lot of times, if it's a data center or any type of tech-related user, it's a highly skilled workforce. So on top of what's here, the student population that we see every year graduate out of our Twin Cities metro school system is phenomenal. We have over 10,000 STEM students every year in this region that complete a program. Instead of losing some of them to migration to other states, there's another opportunity to keep them here as well and help these regional partners expand. So it's really interesting to start looking into that data and see how we can use that to help these projects maybe pause and not question the talent anymore. It's having that opportunity conversation. And think about some of our top industries in the Twin Cities metro, healthcare, insurance. Every industry needs data centers. We have a lot of that here. We have a lot of those Fortune 500 companies here. And so when they're looking to open up an R&D facility or that data center facility, we want them to consider doing that locally, right? And tapping into that talent that's already here versus having to consider moving that somewhere else. So that's the second part of this puzzle, besides just the typical land development stuff that we look at when we talk about readiness. That talent readiness is huge.
Yeah, Chris and Bruce, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on some of Jaquel's comments. She touched a little bit when we were talking about tech talent with students. And one of the cool things that we've done as part of the partnership with the Minnesota Technology Corridor is we've reached out to the local schools, the K-12 school system, and started to make the introduction that, we've got this this really cool idea of the Minnesota Technology Corridor. So is there an opportunity to make connections with the students that are interested in going into coding, computer coding as a career? And so Jaquel and I had the opportunity several months back to visit with a company from out of state that was interested in starting a coding boot camp operation here in the Twin Cities. And so we just reached out to the University of Minnesota and said, well, what are you guys doing? Are you doing anything related to computer coding boot camps right now? And they said, absolutely. We have a program right now in place where we're turning out, I think the number is between 600 and 700 per year. And so we're saying, okay, well, would you guys be interested in partnering with us? Because we know that one of the things the companies are going to look for when they do relocate and expand is the availability of talent. And so we've already started those discussions with the University of Minnesota and our community colleges, Anoka Ramsey and Century College, who we know have programs in place that will help our inquiries find that talent, and especially with the local schools, the K-12 schools, to let the kids know that boy, there's a lot of opportunities in this computer business. And if you're interested, we'd like to talk to you and start to make connections between the existing businesses and the courses right now. And so those connections are taking place. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity going forward.
So what are those conversations like? I'm assuming everybody's a little bit receptive, but do we see, I wanted to put there's the Tech Corridor website, if anybody wants to go to it. You're getting obviously some positive reaction, but what's happening as a result of it? Do you see movement and things changing and people being able to pursue that?
Yeah, I'll maybe start and then have Jaquel, Bruce, and Dan weigh in on it. But yeah, the Forest Lake School District, for example, has a brand new program called Career Launch, where they're working with the students to make connections with the area businesses that are hoping to just start with an internship and then eventually grow that into a college experience of some sort, whether it's a community college, like I mentioned. The University of Minnesota has a phenomenal program in computers, and now the boot camp program, which I think is about a 9-week course, if I'm not mistaken. But just making those connections and letting the students know again that there are great opportunities, and this is a growing field. And if you're interested in it, let's just make those connections to get you placed in a business that can just introduce you to it. And we do have a number of technology companies in the corridor that are starting to make those connections right now with our local school districts.
That's really cool. So Bruce, Jaquel, do you have stuff you want to add?
I guess the only thing I'd add is just the importance of showing firms the pipeline of the talent that is available. And it's short term and long term. Short term is how do they get a building up and running with the right talent? But then also, how do you have this talent pipeline from now for the next 10 years? And I think Chris and Jaquel, you really explained when you start in the high school level and you work into the college level, and then the end result is you're producing this many tech talent people every single year. So I think it's important just to show these companies that tech pipeline that's available.
I got to get back to the CE question just here real quick. I didn't intend for the internet speed thing to be a CE question, but it works perfectly. So if you haven't answered that question, go in the chat room right now. You see other people put in their speed. I want to make that point though. I live on a lake, on a peninsula in the middle of nowhere, right in the northern metro on the edge of this tech corridor. And I have the same speed that Reed Christensen has in Edina. So if any of you are thinking that Forest Lake's kind of far north, are you sure they're good? We're great up here. So kudos to us for matching that and everybody. Okay, so moving along, make sure you go in there and put something in. And if you don't know, put it. I saw a few people that said I don't know how to check, and that's fine because I've logged your response, and that's good. Dan, let's go back to you and talk about trends. What do we see going forward for the data center industry? What are some of the things on the horizon?
Well, I've got a few takeaways that I would, but I want to go back to a point that we were talking about tech talent for a second. On the facility side of a data center operations, historically it's been a fairly insular industry, in my opinion. And now we've got an average age of, upper level management or experienced operators for the infrastructure facility side of data centers that's getting up there in age. And I think there really is a tremendous opportunity matching what the other panelists are talking about, the field of tech talent potential here in this market, combination with the Fortune 5 concentration from both a private enterprise and now a well-established third-party service provider side, of really marrying those things together, creating some great career opportunities for young people looking to get into an industry that can be steady, progressive, and quite lucrative. And one of the places that I would invite them to look further into that is AFCOM, which is an association of computer operations management. And as part of that group, we're trying to foster ways to get more succession plans in place for some of that talent. So I just wanted to put that, not plug in for AFCOM necessarily, but just to highlight the fact that there really is, on the facility sides of data centers, a great opportunity and also a need going forward. So to the takeaways or the trends that I think we're seeing, I think what's happening from a result of the pandemic is it's accelerating timelines that we thought would take a little bit longer. Now, there's going to be we think there's going to be an acceleration or general growth of hybrid infrastructure, some cloud, some co-location, some on-prem maybe for disaster recovery, and utilizing cloud services. These IT leaders are going to be looking for more flexibility in their contracts, more agility with the way that they're deploying their IT needs and they're getting their solutions. And then in the more immediate, they're going to be refocusing some of their business continuity planning, because a lot of the disaster recovery aspects or business continuity aspects kind of got retabled a bit with the pandemic. The second takeaway from a real estate standpoint, I think we're going to see more enterprises, organizations consider sale leasebacks of their privately owned and operated data centers. It will come from a desire to focus their capital more strategically and also improve their operations for these existing assets is a near-term solution, because again, the development cycle and these big spends in a typical deployment is a expensive decision to make. And so if they've got a near-term solution by, I won't call it band-aiding, but utilizing a closer held asset, then I think that's going to be something we're going to see more of. The third thing I would just throw in there is network assessments. Organizations all had to adjust to work from home, and as everyone's looking at their speed on this chat and understanding really where they sit, or imagine a company that had 4,000 of us doing that all in 1 week. And so everybody is kind of refiguring and retrenching the best strategy going forward to manage their investment in light of those network assessments that will be a higher, and some of it getting back to work as normal. But there may be future surges in demand in the future. And so companies have to plan for that. So at CB, we're helping companies. We're getting a lot of requests for companies to help us do those network assessments. For the most part, bandwidth is in place that wasn't utilized during the day that is now used from everybody in the home. And so the home is becoming more of the company's responsibility for the employee, if you will. And so that's really the connection that we're seeing it reach into the home. It affects the data center discussion, but again, as advisors at CB, we're seeing the network assessment becoming an important part, because if you haven't audited that in the last 2 to 3 years, there's potentially either some inefficiencies or digit savings there. So those are the three that I would throw out there.
Yeah, I bet a lot of companies struggled through Zoom calls early on. I know when we were looking at software, we didn't choose Zoom because it was so overloaded. And we found out quickly that bandwidth was important for all companies. It's interesting. I'm going to go a little bit off script here, Dan, because I heard you say earlier 30% vacancy. And at the same time, data center is a hot investment item right now. It's a good class to get into in COVID. Agree 100%. Data centers, industrial, and the apartment people are saying that they're in great shape too. I would rank that third. But to a novice, tell me why 30% isn't so bad. Because if I had 30% vacancy in my apartment building, I'd be having some very uncomfortable conversations right now. So what is sort of the standard, and how do you look at investing in data?
Yeah, and we get that question actually a lot. It's like, tell me why 30% is good. I'll break the number down one way a little bit, and I'll discuss how we measure it another. First, when we're tracking inventory of available capacity for data center and third-party data center use, we're looking at across the spectrum of available inventory. And data centers can be broken into tier levels for simple discussion terms of tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 as far as their level of robustness, redundancy, concurrently maintainable infrastructure, et cetera. And if we look at really the tier 3 and above inventory of this market that most RFPs consider when we're looking market to market, here to Chicago, Dallas, whatever. That vacancy actually goes down a little bit, closer to low 20s. So we still track that other inventory because it's available. It can prove to be at a tier 3 and above, and it also might be a solution that somebody wants at a lower tier level. They don't need that level of redundancy and infrastructure. So there's variations to the availability, the type of inventory in the market. And then because we're measuring on power capacity, not necessarily just square footage, there can be mismatches with how much space and how much power. So one facility can bring in more critical power. It may look like it, but in a smaller space and work at a higher density, it may actually just be more of a positive attribute that you can put more computing power into a more condensed footprint. So it's not apples to apples the way you would think how many units of my apartment building are rented out, and because it's down below 5%, I'm in a healthy equilibrium, or it's gone up to 10 and it's a crisis point. A little more inventory vacancy is actually a positive thing if you're trying to place a larger scale deployment, a megawatt or something.
We're running low on time. Rumor mill has it. Jaquel has a question for you, Dan, and then we're going to go into wrapping it up.
Thanks, Todd. I do have a question for you, Dan, and just your second point that you touched on, the working from home, and obviously that creates an investment opportunity for us moving forward. But we are hearing from regional business leaders that they're looking at permanent solutions to have more people work from home after this permanently, or split it 50-50, because once you're home, I believe it takes 21 days to create a habit, right? So we've been forced now for well over 21 days to use Zoom, to use new opportunities, versus in the past, maybe one of us had a day or two where we had to go home for an appliance repair person and we worked from home for a little bit. But you are utilizing the full technology capabilities. Your company wasn't prepared for that. So this has forced everyone to do that. And now we're realizing there's a lot of ways, I've realized there's a lot of ways I'm more efficient being from home. Maybe not full time, but much more than I was before. So how do you think that'll affect permanent use of data center capacity over time, especially in the Twin Cities market?
Well, I think it's a continuance of a trend that we've already been seeing. It's just, as I said before, an acceleration to finding more of those hybrid solutions. It's going to benefit the cloud folks. It's going to benefit the third-party service providers that may, on a hyperscale level, may provide space to those cloud services. It's going to benefit the interconnected data centers that have carrier hotels where someone wants to put a footprint close to a cloud on-ramp. So that essentially means that they can have a physical presence within an environment that has close connectivity to the cloud services that they may be dialing up or utilizing from a compute standpoint in another aspect of their business. So I think it's just a continuance of what we've already been seeing as the general trend, but maybe just a bit of a leap forward. I think we've had this discussion before, especially when it comes to things like the tech corridor. We're going to have probably a larger disbursement of the hyperscale or the cloud users in more markets. And I think we'll probably see those efforts continue to expand in the mid-continent, including our market. And so, I'm cautiously optimistic, because these deals take time, even longer than typical deals, and even longer in light of what's going on with the pandemic. So, but I'm positive looking forward.
Yeah, deal speed has changed, but I'm impressed with people's ability during this pandemic to get stuff done. It's impressive. It's cool. So we're going to go around the horn and say goodbye, but we have one question we didn't get to address. So that is talking about key factors to ensure that the region's ready for data center projects of all sizes. So if you want to touch on that as we go around the horn, say goodbye, add in anything that we missed, make sure now's your chance to add it in. People watching online, if you're getting CE, hang on until exactly 11 o'clock. It would be great if you hung on after that. But I got to make sure you're here till 11, and I'll look at that timestamp. But if we go a little bit over, it's being recorded. It's on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it there. But panelists, it's okay if we go 5 minutes over or so. So get your last comments in and answer the question. Let's start with Chris, because I haven't heard from him in a little bit.
Thank you, Todd. And again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. And, if you are interested in finding out more about the Minnesota Technology Corridor, please feel free to reach out to Bruce, Jaquel, Dan, or myself, and we'd be glad to point you in the right direction. We won't waste your time. Honestly, if there's a site that isn't going to work for you, we want you to know that up front. We've always been under the impression that a quick no is better than a long maybe, so we want to make sure that we're not wasting your time and making progress whenever we can and adding value whenever we can. So, but just to leave you with something is that we want to do deals. We want you to contact us and work with us. And if you're in the industry, let's talk about a partnership of some sort. How do you see us working to help you with your clients? And at the end of the day, we're through this collaborative effort trying to make it easier and try to make these deals happen quickly. So with that, again, I'll just say thank you. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend and continue to stay safe and be healthy.
Let's work around the horn. And Bruce, we haven't heard from you in a while either, so you get to go.
Alrighty. Well, again, thanks everybody for joining us today. And I think really the number one factor of making this work is the collaboration. I mean, this is really, we believe, is the first of its kind when you got 2 different counties, 5 cities, multiple utilities sitting at the same table wanting the good for the region. And cities have said, well, if you get this, we're going to probably end up with housing and retail and everything else on the other side. So it's just, to me, it was just a phenomenal effect of the collaboration and everybody working together for the common good of this region. So again, thanks and be safe.
All right, Jaquel.
Yeah, thanks. Chris and Bruce touched on a lot, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Dan, thank you for your partnership in this effort and making sure the Minnesota Tech Corridor is ready for data centers, but just Minnesota and as a whole. I know Dan does work across the entire metro and across the state. So all the factors we talked about today about the Minnesota Tech Corridor being ready for data centers, those are the same factors that we should be talking about across the state. So if there are data center sites, outside the tech corridor, we need to have those same considerations that we're ready for development. Because if someone's looking at Minnesota and they look at a site, for instance, in Elk River has a great data center park, I know, and they're not really giving them good answers or giving them that slow maybe versus that hard no, they might just rule Minnesota in all, right? So we want to make sure everyone's on that same level playing field, that we've got our information ready, we're ready to come to the table and fast track a project, because it lifts all of us up. It lifts all of our partners that are involved in a project, and it lifts all of us that are trying to help be prepared for data center projects. So again, reach out to any of us if you have questions about doing a project in the tech corridor specifically, but focus on those factors in general for the state.
Excellent. Last but not least, did we have 2 more? We didn't get to Dan yet. Chris, we got to you. It's too many webinars. We got to cut back from 50 down to 10 for next month. But Dan, sorry, where do you? Final goodbyes, and do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, well, no, I just want to say thanks to everyone that we were able to join today. Certainly the panelists and you as well, Todd. I think the word I like to leave it with is, momentum. And I think there's a lot of things that are lined up to help create momentum. And I like to be one of those resources for that. And, to even the brokers that are on the call today, data centers are a little different, and sometimes there's a little different language that goes with it, but I'm always willing to help others, because as Jaquel said, one success in one place helps create more success in others. And especially in the data center world, as the awareness spreads from one market to another nationally, if one provider goes in, then we can see another buying into it. Or if a large scale cloud provider goes in, then the supportive services and wholesale providers come soon after. So, creating that clustering of momentum is really something that we can build upon. And so I'm ready to be a resource to help with that as well. So my phone's open even if I'm here at the lake. And again, everybody stay safe. And hopefully our kids will be in school in fall.
Amen to that. Please let a school be normal, right? There's Dan's contact info. This was a great panel, y'all, and I love talking with this team. You guys do so much to help businesses out, and data centers, I think all of us just figured out in April and May how really important the flow of data is for us, and the capacity and the backup and redundancy is thoughts I know I never had. I don't know about the four of you, but I had never been on a web call until March 15th, and now I'm doing 2 webinars a day. This has changed our lives, and I think for the better. Of course, my office looks like a TV studio now. I'd like to have it go back to an office, but it's pretty cool. So thanks, team. This was great. Look forward to doing it again soon. If you're online and you signed out, it's great that you put your name in. Thank you for that. Feel free to say goodbye to the panelists. I got their contact info. If you need that, you can always email me. Also, this is recorded. Again, it's up on our YouTube channel, or you can just go to rejournals.com and find it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and everybody have a wonderful, safe weekend. Enjoy the weather.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.